the war that the city of New York, led by Mayor de Blasio, is leading against churches and really against freedom. I mean, seriously, this is, you know, if he really does, if he really does believe in freedom, then he's going to allow these churches to be able to do what they're doing. I mean, we say phrases like this a lot, you know, and talk about politicians being for or against freedom, but this is a guy that has, you know, not only supported most or all of the freedom-snatching work of the previous mayor, Mike Bloomberg, but he's found his own niche, gone after a number of things. This story, though, interests me. Joining me right now, Jack Roberts is the founding pastor of Bronx House of Faith. This is one of the churches that is being targeted by Bill de Blasio. They're trying to limit churches from using public schools and facilities on the weekend for worship, for gathering. Also joining me is Jordan Lorence. He is the Senior Counsel, Alliance Defending Freedom. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. Obviously, as a Christian, this kind of hits a little close to home. I was really shocked to hear not only that this has been happening, but to hear in particular how long you and the Bronx House of Faith has been fighting this battle. Pastor Roberts, if you could, tell me a little bit about the beginning of your fight, so to speak, with not just Bill de Blasio, but since 1995 against having this sort of worship gathering shut down.
Well, the church began in 1971 with Bob Hall and I wanting to bring the gospel to one of the poorest neighborhoods in New York City. And we first met in homes, but after a while that was no longer suitable, and we applied to the New York City Department of Education, called the Board of Education at that point, to rent a school on weekends for worship services. The request was denied because a policy was in place that prohibited churches from renting it for worship services. So a lawsuit was filed in 1995, and Alliance Defending Freedom was central to that, and Jordan Lorence was the lead counsel. In 2002, ADF was able to get an injunction that allowed us to rent the schools on Sundays, which we have done since then, and there have been about 60 to 80 churches who've rented public schools for that purpose. But there's been a legal battle going back and forth in the federal district court and the appeals court, and finally we're applying to the Supreme Court to finally resolve the issue.
Yeah, and this would create such a chilling effect, bringing Jordan Lorence here with the ADF. This would have such a chilling effect, yes, on worship and church planting. And I don't understand how they would be able to do this. I mean, is it just these churches that are not allowed to rent public facilities, or is it just, can others rent them? What's their reasoning on this?
The policy bans worship services, but basically allows everything else. Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. I mean, they've even allowed the filming of episodes of Law and Order in the public schools. The only thing they specifically ban is no religious worship services or otherwise using the school as a house of worship. Now, people have probably heard of churches meeting in New York City schools because we've had this court order in effect since 2002. But unless the Supreme Court takes the case on February 23rd, we'll get the orders list. The mayor can kick out all the churches out of the schools. And what we're fearful of and concerned about is that other communities, because everywhere else in the country, of the top 50 school districts, New York City is the only one in America that has a policy like this. But Los Angeles, Chicago, Dallas, etc., they can all start saying, hey, maybe we should adopt this policy and throw out the churches and synagogues or whatever that are worshiping now in our public schools.
And that Supreme Court, if the Supreme Court doesn't take up this case, wow, that's giving a lot of power to this particular order. And the chilling effect, I want to go back to you, Pastor, yes, Roberts, that this has. I mean, this is how churches begin. Maybe a few people will meet in homes, and then when it gets too big for code there, they go and rent out public buildings. Never been a problem anywhere else.
That's right. Rental properties in New York City are extremely high, as you can imagine. And so this really is the only good, reasonable place for churches to rent where they can grow. And we've seen that happen dozens and dozens of times, and so we're really happy about it. And we believe that God is involved in this, and He has a plan to make it work.
Well, we're going to be following this story. Like I said, you know, one of the churches that would be affected by this is basically a satellite church of ours. It's in Harlem, and the more I heard about this story and looked into it and was reading about your fight with it, well, we'll be praying for it definitely. And I know we're going to be following up with you as well, and we're going to watch for that February 23rd date and the Supreme Court action on that. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. Pastor Jack Roberts, Jordan Lorence, AllianceDefendingFreedom.org, and you can find Pastor Roberts at BHOF, Bronx House of Faith. .org. Thank you, gentlemen, both.